Hello everyone, welcome back to another Shade video. It has been a long time since I've done one of these, and today I want to talk about Silk staking. As many of you know, Shade Protocol product Silk is probably our most iconic product with its ability to be hedged against volatility. It's capable of outperforming the dollar consistently. And one kind of question at large with Silk, as I kind of scroll down to its chart here, is how do you expand the supply of a stablecoin? We know that Silk is this incredible product, but we seem to be kind of stalled out at around 2 million in circulating supply. And so today's presentation, I kind of want to walk through the fundamentals of stablecoin game theory and how you grow a stablecoin, and why Shade Protocol is extremely well positioned to start taking some bigger bets on Silk growth. So the first piece of the puzzle here is, how do stablecoins win? Fundamentally, every stablecoin in circulation, when you're doing a CDP over collateralized style stablecoin, every stablecoin in circulation represents debt. It means that whoever minted that stablecoin took out a loan against their position, and in order for them to reclaim access to their collateral or to avoid potential liquidation, they need to return that debt back to the smart contract. And on the protocol side, there is an interest rate charged against these borrowers. This interest rate is mission critical for two reasons. One, it's a form of monetization and revenue for providing, this smart contract service of allowing, this stable coin to exist and in terms of maintaining its peg. So one piece is monetization, and the next piece is peg stability. If you have no interest rates at all, and debt is really, really cheap to mint, people can kind of lock up collateral, mint out your stablecoin, swap it to something else that is giving higher yield, and this can end up depegging your stablecoin. And actually, the first 6 months of Silk's existence, interest rates were at 0%, which is kind of crazy, and the peg actually held really strongly. But over time, we started to have people start to chase yield elsewhere, and because of this overly cheap debt, there was kind of depeg situations, and so then Shade Protocol kind of entered into its era of beginning to charge interest, not only as a monetization mechanism, but also as a stability mechanism. Now, we're now entering into this new phase where Silk has been live for close to 2 years. It's actually, for the first time in its history, been perfectly tracking the peg for the last week. I think we're really entering into the maturation phase of Silk, that it's outperformed the dollar by roughly 16%, and it's well positioned to grow. And the way you grow a stablecoin is you need to attract people who want to buy and hold debt. The debt of someone who's borrowed against a CDP style vault. Because what happens is, when someone buys debt, the demand curve shifts to the right, and inevitably, in order to kind of meet this new demand, and in terms of all the smart contracts and how debt is managed, essentially supply grows as demand grows. And so when someone just mints out more Silk without any new Silk buyers, you're not actually sustainably growing supply. In many ways, what's happening there is you're creating a temporary kind of supply dislocation, where supply increases but demand does not, and you're helping a borrower perform some leverage function. That's obviously a mission critical part of Silk's growth, is encouraging more borrowers, deep liquidity with Silk, so people could kind of perform this type of financial expression. But fundamentally, the best path to growing a stablecoin supply is acquiring as many new buyers and holders as possible, and then your borrowers end up meeting that new demand. And if the cost to attract debt buyers is cheaper than the interest charged against borrowers, you're able to effectively grow supply. So in summary, for instance, if I can right now with Silk's interest being 4%, and I'll switch to this slide here. If I can offer someone who's going to buy Silk a 3% yield, and that makes them buy Silk and stake Silk, that's less than the 4% interest that's charged on the borrower that introduced that supply into circulation. And that 1% gap between kind of this Silk staker versus the borrower is ultimately our profit margin. And MakerDAO and a lot of CDP style stablecoins have done this type of staking setup where as long as APY for your staking is below your borrowing rate, the protocol is actually net profitable. And so what I would propose, and we're looking to be doing this in, whether it be today or tomorrow, is to be actually launching Silk staking and introducing kind of like our risk-free rate for Silk stakers. So Silk staking will have no unbonding time. It'll be instant unbond, and you'll be able to tap into Silk staking yield. Now, initially when we launch Silk staking, it's not profitable for the protocol. Inevitably, what's going to happen is APY is going to be 30, 40, 50%. And it's actually going to be profitable for people to come in, lock up collateral, mint out Silk, and stake it because the cost to borrow is cheaper than the rewards you're earning from Silk staking. But what inevitably happens here is the TVL of Silk staking is going to grow, and APY is going to be driven downwards towards that borrow rate of 4%. And then what happens is right around 4%, there you start to swap out people that are locking up collateral, minting Silk to stake. You're swapping those people out with actual buyers of debt who then go and stake. And so what happens there is your APY profile will actually drop below the interest rate. And now the protocol is in the green because it's no longer profitable for borrowers to stake. And you're essentially swapping this composition of Silk stakers slowly shifts away from borrower and shifts over to these buyers of debt, which is highly, highly, highly profitable. And so right now, Shade Protocol has a really unique opportunity because we're finally starting to grow our demand centers for Silk. We have Silk Earn, where you can earn Shade rewards plus liquidations, and this APY is north of 12%. But there's some complexity. There's some complexity to that earning option because you have to manage liquidations. Obviously, another Silk demand center is just holding Silk. It's outperformed USD by roughly 8% in the last couple of years. So people that just simply hold Silk and buy it for its properties is another demand center. Liquidity providing. People that want to chase yield and dollar cost average out of another position can become a Silk liquidity provider. Silk debit cards is another great example. People buying Silk to actually go and spend it in the real world. And the two new demand centers that we're introducing very soon, one is the ability to lend out Silk on ShadeX. And then the one we're talking about today is Silk staking, which would probably net APY anywhere between 4% to 20%, depending on where the market places the pool. And over time, hopefully that APY drops as much as humanly possible. And just as like a simple thought experiment, if you put down, $50,000 of annualized rewards, let's say over the course of 12 months, just for this thought experiment, and if APY settled at, say, even 10%, the TVL on Silk staking would be roughly $6 million. So there would be 6 million new Silk that comes into circulation to stake. And if you assume 30% LTVs on the kind of CDP vaults to create this new supply to service this new demand, you can expect there to be roughly $10 to $20 million of new collateral on Shade Lend. And so this kind of flywheel that Silk staking kicks off, additional collateral means additional liquidations, which equals additional Shade swap revenue, which equals additional Silk earn revenue. So it creates this kind of It sucks in new supply, it sucks in new collateral of people kind of chasing the staking yield. And so with 8 million Silk supply at 4% interest, there would be roughly $320,000 of annual interest earned on Silk supply. Now you'll notice that the cost of Silk staking is $600,000 and the annual interest is only $320,000. So this is kind of this is where the math gets really interesting, because we have a DEX and we have all sorts of other kind of pieces of the puzzle here, especially with ShadeX coming. So Silk staking has this opportunity to be a loss leader, while APY, if APY is above the interest rate, it's like a loss leader that arguably is worth it. And this is mainly why I'm making this video, because I kind of want to start this discussion of, do we want to make a big bet on Silk staking, kind of run an experiment to see how much the market reacts to kind of a large amount of rewards tied to kind of what we would consider risk-free staking. And the cool part about Silk staking is that you'll earn Silk yield. You're not going to be earning a volatile token. You'll actually be earning Silk. And the idea is, let's say we do this big Silk staking play. What we want to do is we actually want to rotate Silk stakers into ShadeX. So this would be probably some sort of 3-month campaign of accelerated rewards. The first month is really big and you slowly ease off. And the goal is we get people to come in, they buy Silk or borrow Silk, they stake it. Eventually, they will switch to D-Silk, which would be the liquid staking version of Silk staking. And then eventually, we want them to go and lend out D-Silk or regular Silk on ShadeX and really build out the supply profiles over there. And this is going to end up allowing this kind of market arbitrage between the protocol's lending rate and ShadeX lending's rate. You have your whole fixed rate versus variable rate interest markets that can start to get very interesting. And additionally, we'll more than likely be allowing D-Silk to be collateral on ShadeX. And this is because D-Silk has instant unbonding time. There's essentially no difference between Silk and D-Silk. It's just like a burn mint. It's instantaneous. So D-Silk as collateral means people can start to perform really interesting Silk staking arbitrage loops, which would drive down that APY closer and closer and closer to the 4% interest rate, where we start to get closer and closer to being in the green. So anyways, thank you, Shade Whales, for listening to this presentation. Really pumped on Silk staking. MakerDAO does this to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'd love to kick off like an experiment and see what this does. And hope you guys have a wonderful day.